Hello and welcome to my video here at commaik. It's early January and my gardening has to wait a bit, so today I will simply take you into my house. Our villa is 120 years old and has a damp basement, which we have already been able to partially dry out. In this video I will take you along to another basement that has not yet been dried out and show you how I proceed, which method I use, what to pay attention to, and what you should definitely avoid doing. With that in mind, stay tuned, see you soon. Yes, my dear ones, what you see here is a basement in the northwest corner, and in this basement the wall is wet. The floor, as you can see down here, has also suffered from moisture damage. The house itself was completely dried out from the outside, about 5 or 6 years ago, so these walls are also directly protected at the back. However, I do not have a real foundation under the house, and so the moisture is drawn up through the walls from below. I naturally want to stop this and intend to dry out the entire space so that I can continue to use this basement area. As in the other basement rooms where I have already done this, I will also apply the injection method here. This means that the walls will be gradually filled with a special liquid that makes the entire area hydrophilic. This means that the walls no longer absorb water, and gradually they dry out and no longer release moisture into the basement. In this context, I would like to briefly show you the basement before I get started here. We have about 30 to 40 square meters in size, and we are now underground. The ground is, when you see the windows here, approximately at the bottom edge of the windows. This is the ground seam as it lies outside. There is a drainage mat attached to the house, filled with gravel, chippings, frost protection, and at the very bottom I have also installed a proper drainage system, meaning this black pipe that directs the water away, where there are no holes at the bottom that would allow it to spread back here. No, there is a real drainage system installed here. The walls themselves have already started to effloresce in some places. You can see white spots here. Behind this window there is an old shaft where light, coal, vegetables, or whatever was thrown down in the past was brought in from the other side of the window down to the floor, as there is still a basement underneath. This means there is absolutely no contact with any soil. I think you can see quite well that the walls look a bit different there. It's completely different over here. As you can see, the floor has noticeable color differences from the damp areas. And especially this corner back here is very, very damp. There is a very simple reason for this. This house stood empty for many years and has also suffered enormous damage from the weather. And at this outside corner out here, there is a downspout from the gutter. And this rain pipe used to connect over 10 years ago to a clay pipe, forming a bend right at this corner of the house. And this clay pipe was broken hot. This means that the entire rain area of about 120-130 square meters, which was connected to this rain pipe, ran directly down this house wall and straight into this basement. When we bought the house and experienced the first rainfalls, I can tell you the water flowed directly through the wall. I have fixed everything from the outside so that nothing else can happen. However, I really don't like that it is still so damp here. And at this point, I would like to give you a brief overview of how damp it actually is here. For comparison purposes, I simply bought two different hygrometers with thermometer functions. That means they are not different, they are the same models. And you can see we have very, very slight deviations because the 2001 thermometers were still placed in different locations at the moment. This will align over the course of this video. And at the same time, I now have a measuring device here with which I can easily measure the masonry moisture. You can see a scale here. On the left side, the relative humidity in the outdoor area is displayed, and on the right side, the scale indicates the condition of the walls. And if I now simply hold this part here, connecting it, you can see that the display itself is blinking. This means that the measurement is off the scale. You might not want to see it, but contact with the hands confirms the whole thing. And now I'm just going over here to this corner, where I also have various manifestations. I now have a stone here that looks relatively dry. I hold it up and I hope it can still be seen. The moisture is slowly rising here at about 1.8% relative stone moisture. This is very, very high for masonry. If I go a bit deeper here, 2001 under my protective layer, You can see that the scale is just blinking because the moisture is so high that it can't even be measured anymore. Well, and taking a step back, you can see that I have already prepared the drill holes. You can see here, I think quite well in the video, that the lower two rows of stones, as I have them here, look relatively dark compared to the rows of stones that come above them. This is certainly also due to the fact that I have a barrier layer above this second layer. This means that even in the year 1900, it was already planned in advance that the builders of this house had placed a tar paper or something similar in between. And the moisture that is now being drawn up from below through the masonry gets trapped here on this tar paper. It cannot rise any further and then spreads from here to the left and right into the remaining bricks, or over this concrete floor, which consists of bricks and has been covered with concrete. This issue runs through practically all the basement rooms in this building, and in most other rooms I have already put a stop to it by simply sealing the walls after the cause was addressed in the exterior area. By drying it out, I have ensured that no moisture can be drawn up from the ground anymore, as I have made the walls hydrophilic with an injection solution. Specifically, it should be noted that the walls here are relatively thick, some up to 1 meter. The brick walls on the side are not quite as thick. These are the walls respectively. In some places, there is still a layer on the outside that allows access to the walls. Well, as you can see, the whole situation is quite different, and at this point I would like to take you into my basement, as it also needs a solution. I hope that the lighting conditions allow me to film down here at least somewhat decently. And you can see here an old vegetable cellar, an old coal cellar. We are now about 6 meters underground, and here in this area you can see very clearly that it is really wet. It was deeply damp in some places and already dry in others, and that's where my first problem begins. I can't assess what kind of walls these are, or what material the whole thing is made of. It is relatively solid. Whether this is cast concrete, I dare to doubt. It feels more like sand, and in the framework, you can also see the impressions of formwork boards and similar materials. That means it was really built intentionally like this. And on the other side over here, you can see that there are small stones. When I touch it, it feels almost like earth, like compacted soil. I really need to figure out how to dry out this lower area. If anyone has an idea or has done something like this before, please write it in the comments. I would be really happy to get some practical ideas here, because I really want to actively use this space. And you can see down here, I have already done a small test drilling right under this concrete floor here, which is not very thick, maybe 5 centimeters thick. Beneath this concrete floor is directly the clay soil. This means that there isn't even a foundation placed here. I am essentially walking on the normal earth. The moisture that seeps in here spreads throughout the entire area. And unfortunately, you can see that when I simply tilt the camera up to the ceiling. The ceiling itself is made of steel beams, and between these steel beams, bricks are embedded. Overall, it is relatively stable, but to be honest, it doesn't look very reassuring. Well, I can scrape the rust off with my bare finger here. I wouldn't want to build anything new here in good conscience, without having properly secured the whole thing first. If I just show you this here, it is not very reassuring. But enough about the vegetable cellar. That will become a problem in itself, figuring out how to redesign and rebuild it. For now, I'll take you back up to the upper cellar. Yes, love. The principle I'm using here is relatively simple. My goal is to get as much of this injection solution into the wall as possible. Or rather, to get so much in there that the walls absorb it well, that the liquid from the drone distributes evenly, and subsequently avoids or completely prevents any water ingress. There are skeptics who view the whole thing as not very meaningful. They have their own theories about it or their own suggestions. In my case, I can really rely on the experience that methods like these have truly led to the results I envisioned in other cellar spaces here. Among other things, I have a cellar room on the opposite side that can now be completely used as an office. The humidity there averages over 90%. How should I proceed with the whole thing now? Ultimately, there are various providers. I originally worked with the provider Porofin, or with the provider that manufactures this Porofin. In my opinion, this is a very costly method, but it has delivered very, very good results for our house. In between, we had the test with Novasan. I can't really give a judgment on that because we only tested that one bottle. At some point later, we came across the product Cellar Dry. You can see it in these large canisters. This is in a completely different price class than, for example, the other two here, meaning that it is significantly cheaper. And this method has now been used completely in another room for over 2 years. And I must say, the result is really very, very satisfactory. I hope that this remains the case permanently. I cannot assess that yet, but at least after a 2-year test, it has proven itself. But now let's move on to the practical part. My goal is to not leave the liquid in the canisters, but rather to get it into the walls. And for that, I use these injection bottles. With these bottles, they are usually included in the starter package. There are also providers with funnels. In this context, I have always preferred to use these bottles because the closures on the walls are tight. Nothing has leaked out on the left and right. And yes, the bottles themselves are always quite scarce. I was lucky to find someone on eBay Classifieds where I could order an ER pack for €1 each. Of course, I jumped at the chance as the bottles are reusable. I have already filled these bottles with the liquid by first transferring it from the large canister to my medium canister and then from there into the bottles. Because transferring directly from the large canister into the bottles would have meant that at least half of this liquid would have ended up on the floor. That, of course, would not have been the point of the matter. That's why this intermediate filling was necessary. A few bottles, as you can see, are already prepared and can now be placed into the holes. 2001.
The holes must be drilled according to various specifications. You can see this with the respective manufacturers. I will just show you a sample image from the manufacturer Porofin. It specifies exactly how deep and at what angle the holes need to be made. The drilling distance here is set at 25 centimeters. If you want to apply it evenly across the wall, then offset each row by half. You can see this in the picture today. And of course, it's also very important that the corners should be additionally secured, so that the liquid distributes well in the corners, as there isn't enough surface area from the inside to really ensure the entry. I have now drilled the holes here at a significantly closer distance because the wall has a lot of moisture damage. And yes, I rely on the Native American method of more is more, which is why it's not 25 centimeters but always half a stone. That means we are now somewhere around use and 12 centimeters where I have drilled the holes. This also applies below the cardboard layer, which is underneath the wall, and provides a certain level of protection, as it should eventually dry out from above. My main concern is to secure everything from the bottom up. I am going to do one now. I will take my bottle. Just as it is here now. You then have it in your hand. Just take a drill hole, insert the bottle in here, all the way in at an angle until it stops. It bubbles for a while, until the drill hole is soaked, and then it stops, and gradually flows into the wall. You will notice that some bottles just gurgle through in one go. There was probably a cavity behind it. But don't worry, the moisture will also rise through the surrounding stones, yes, those that are around the cavity, so that the whole thing is not completely lost. I will now gradually introduce the remaining bottles into these holes as well. Ideally, always turn it a bit so that you can see at the top how much has already flowed in. Do this along the length here, once over to this side, and then once to the other side up to the front here. Let's see how far I can get with my current bottles that I have refilled. Otherwise, I will need to assist with that again. I have now completely inserted the filled bottles into the holes. You can see that it reached all the way to the back corner. In 2001, it happened to me with just 2 bottles that they were not properly in the opening and had to be pushed back in, as something went wrong. Here at the front, I then completely removed the bottle. No matter how I positioned them, something always slipped past. I suspect the drill hole was just too shallow. So, I will make another drill hole on the left and right, or above, let's see, and simply insert the bottle again. So, that's really not a problem. If you have something like this, just be careful at the beginning to ensure that not too much spills over, ideally nothing at all because this liquid is expensive enough and you shouldn't waste it unnecessarily on the floor. Well, how does my project proceed now? Next, I will let the bottles run empty one by one, and where the process goes quite smoothly and quickly, I will gradually refill the bottles until the wall is saturated. One also had to ensure that the joints, at least the masonry joints, are filled with the liquid. so it should definitely be visible that the wall becomes wetter at first. The liquid ensures that no fresh water can seep in. However, this also means that the moisture already present in the masonry must first evaporate. This means that with the method I am using here, the water is not actively displaced, but rather, it evaporates gradually on its own over the wall surfaces. And this naturally takes a bit more time than the somewhat more expensive liquids, as is advertised with paraffin, which actively displaces the water. To have some control over the whole process, I will now use my two hygrometers, and as you can see throughout the video, they have largely come closer to each other. I will now include them for comparison purposes. Well, now it's time to wait. I will take regular recordings, keep a log, and post more videos in this project. This is the introductory video to show how it all begins and how I handle the whole process. If you have ideas or suggestions for improvement, feel free to write them in the comments. I am curious to hear what you have to say, and for this video I will conclude for now. If you want to know what happens next, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, activate the bell 2001 so you won't miss any of my new videos. And until then, I say goodbye, thank you for watching, and ciao.